Welcome to the Squint podcast. Today we are thrilled to welcome Meredith Oke, Executive Director of the Institute of Applied Quantum Biology and host of the Quantum Biology podcast. She has spent the past 5 years interviewing experts in the quantum field to better understand and share the power of light in all forms to both heal and harm. We got the chance to talk with her about circadian health and light, and she has such a lovely voice. We could listen to her all day. We hope you enjoy it too. Let's take a squint.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I'm so excited, and I'm so grateful to the Quantum Biology Collective because that was kind of where I got my start, and between Carrie and everyone on the faculty, it was amazing how much I learned and how much I'm still learning from the Quantum Biology
Amazing.
Collective. I mean, there's so many great podcasts, and you have so many amazing people that are talking about all things light and water and all the wonderful things that we talk about. So it's lots of fun. So anyway, I'm glad that we're talking on the spring equinox. It's a perfect day. Happy spring.
Oh my gosh, we are, aren't we?
I know. And I have a little bit of spring behind me.
Yeah, you're getting it.
Yes, I'm getting it. I might even get some sun here pretty soon.
Nice.
But it was interesting. I was thinking about the spring equinox and um, just that used to have no meaning to me. I mean, I would look on a calendar and I would see it on the calendar and just it was just kind of this pre-printed notion on a calendar that really had nothing to do with my life. And it's so interesting that once you really dig deep and you start looking and learning about quantum biology, that's how we work. And although it may be something printed on the calendar, it's a whole lot more in terms of our health and how we operate. So anyway,
Yeah, I totally,
isn't it crazy?
yeah.
So, so anyway, as we're moving into spring, I'm trying to talk to people a lot about getting your light right. And, as we're moving into spring, not to really embrace this time of year as kind of spring training, if you will, for the stronger rays of light that are going to come in the summer. Can you explain a little bit more about circadian rhythm and more specifically during the day, the power of the sun and how we access the sun and daily routines that we can do to make it a part of our life and not just something that we blindly look over on our calendar?
Sure. And I'd love to get into that idea of how we used to think about or not think about the sun and light as well. But in terms of the time of year, so once you've kind of internalized the idea that light really matters, that our bodies are in continuous communication with their environment, and there are certain signals and frequencies that make sense to our biology, and there's certain frequencies and signals that do not.
Yes.
And generally speaking, frequencies made by nature make sense to our biology. And when our biology makes sense of it, our bodies are able to do what they're meant to do. They're able to stay in flow. It's like if someone was speaking to you in the English language and giving you instructions, you could follow them. But if someone came up and started screaming at you and they were drunk and screaming in gibberish, it's like,
Right.
I don't know what you're saying, right? And
Right.
so our cells it's the same thing.
Right.
And we haven't, been taught that because people didn't think about it. It's ancient wisdom that many many civilizations have known, and many and energy practitioners and people like that understand. But it's not what we learned in ninth grade biology.
Right.
So it's like once the first step is to realize that there's these continuous conversations going on. So it's like, okay, so if that's happening, then all of the sudden the quality and the nature of the frequencies that we're surrounded by start to take on a new meaning, because it's like in the same way if I'm on a road trip and I'm like, I really don't want to, but I'm just gonna eat a McDonald's burger because that's literally the only food for the next 100 miles. Like,
Right.
I know, I know what I'm doing. I know that's not good. I know my body's not gonna like it. But we don't think about that when it comes to light or sound or in the invisible frequencies coming out of all of our devices. So it's like making that shift from not from being totally unconscious of it to thinking like, oh, okay, if I understand that what I put into my body matters and I'm conscious about and I think about that, now I'm understanding that what I surround my body with matters. The environment that I'm in matters. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, well, what's happening outside? And all of the cycles of nature,
Hmm.
which we are, you know, evolutionarily speaking, we were programmed by those cycles of nature. And up until very recently, we lived by them. Our lives were dictated by the sun and the moon and the seasons. And so that to understand quantum biology and to understand we're in conversation with that is a return. And once you make that return, it's like, oh, spring is coming.
Right. Right.
As you were saying, it's not just a date on the calendar. It's
Hmm.
like it's a shift and you can feel it energetically.
Right.
And, from a practical perspective, if we start exposing our skin to the light, now we will, start to prepare our skin and prepare our bodies to absorb the stronger rays that are coming when summer arrives.
Right. I think it's so interesting, you know, a lot of people, aren't feeling well and they don't really know why. And then when you kind of figure it out that, oh, wow, your body is perfectly designed for nature. So we're designed to be outside and we're perfectly designed to receive this light that's perfectly calibrated for our health, which is so interesting because we don't think of light as a nutrient. And we talk a lot about food and food, nourishing food is important, but we never really think about light as a nutrient. And it's our most important nutrient. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is a little bit about sound. It's so funny. I have chimes in my backyard. And if you asked me 10 years ago, chimes, I would have said, oh, that is, it's like hippy dippy. I don't know what that means. But now that I know that sound is a frequency that our bodies respond to, an important frequency, both positively and negatively, it's really profound that we have all these inputs that we don't really know about and that are invisible and UV and infrared and all these frequencies of sound and light. It's really amazing that to learn about all this. And I'm so grateful for QBC for, you know, being a great foundation for learning all of this. So I wanted to ask you too, just, we're talking about good light during the day, but I wanted to talk about the circadian disruptors that happen at night, and during the day, with both blue light and non-natural, frequencies that we're getting from our phones. Can you talk a little bit about these frequencies that we can't see, but they're having, a big impact on the health of our bodies?
Yes. So, as you know, when we were talking about, I was saying earlier that our bodies are in continuous conversation with our environments, right? And there's inputs that our biology can understand, and there's inputs that make no sense to it. So, when technology was developed, nobody had any thought about any of that, right? Like it wasn't, there are kind of nefarious conspiracy theories that the technology was evolved on purpose to be harmful. And I don't know if that's true. From what I know about tech people is they just get really excited when they make a new thing and it does stuff. And that's just completely what they were focused on. It's like, oh my gosh, this, and then, oh my gosh, this. And the idea of, well, how is that going to affect our biology was not even on the table. Like it's not even something that they were thinking about at all.
Mhm.
You know, you think about different things that have changed over the years, like the way paint in your home used to be so toxic. And then people were like, oh, wait, we're putting that on the wall and then we're breathing in the fumes of it. And then that's actually going into our bodies,
Mhm.
you know, and it takes us a while to make these connections. Like very rarely are things reverse engineered from the point of view of, is this going to be supportive of human biology? So we get that with paint, we get that with asbestos, you know, these off gassing, we get that with chemicals in our food. It's like, what are these man-made things that we're exposing our bodies to that turning out to be really bad for them? We've now reached the point where we need to start thinking about that in terms of technology. So the technology was just created to do stuff.
Mhm.
And so the frequency of the light that comes out of the screen was literally like, how bright can we make it so people can see what's
Mhm.
going on here? And the frequencies that come out of your Wi-Fi router or your phone, it was just like, how much can we jack them up so things work really fast, right?
Right.
Like this was the motivation for everything. In the same way that, you know, a non-organic apple, it's like, what can we do to this apple to make it as shiny, as glossy as possible in the store so people buy it? It's that kind of thinking. So that kind of thinking has been driving all of our technological innovation, and the convenience of it and the speed of it and the like incredible things that it can do have been the focus. And now it's time to be like, you know, going back to the food, or going back to toxic chemicals in our homes, or in our, now we need to start thinking about that in terms of our technology,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, okay, so our bodies are in continuous conversation with all of the frequencies in our environment. So that would be healthy frequencies like from the sun, the Schumann resonance of the earth, all. But then there's also like what's coming out of all of these devices that we're surrounded by, and not just our devices, but you go out in public and you're surrounded by everyone else's devices. And the answer is that is like, that's like junk food on the road trip for your cells. Those signals are not understood by biology, and I won't get into the technical details of it, the technical scientific details of it. That's not my area, but they are causing chaos. So the cells are not able to do what they're supposed to do. Our biology is not able to function the way it's supposed to function. And it's not like, you know, being exposed to a radioactive site and it's like, oh my gosh, like you went near it and now you're going to die. But it's slowly over time, the cumulative effect of having these disruptors bombarding our bodies. There is a lot of evidence, a lot of scientific research to show that it's harmful and it's not good for us. And so, not to freak out, there's things that we can't control, like cell towers, but to the extent that we can control those frequencies and mitigate them, especially while we're sleeping, it's
Mhm.
really, really important. In the same way that we think about eating healthy organic food, we want to think about having a healthy, clean frequency environment. So the practical application of that would be like no technology in the bedroom, no cell phones in the bedroom. If you have to have it in there, put it on airplane mode, turn your Wi-Fi router off at night. If you want to like go even deeper, there are Wi-Fi routers on the market where you can lower the output of the frequency, because the mainstream commercial ones that just blast out at the highest possible amount to get the fastest possible speed, because that's all they care about. But
Mhm.
there are ones that are made in Europe and other places where you can turn it way down.
Mhm.
And my husband and I even experimented. We ordered one and we kept turning it down and down and down. And we were still getting internet.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's like, it's at like, I don't know, I forget the exact, but like a fraction of what the mainstream ones blast out. And everything works fine. We're like, why is it like that?
I know. Well, I mean, it's hard work to mitigate, but it's important work because there are a lot of things that we can't control. So I try to kind of control what's closest to me. I mean, I'm on an Ethernet cord here. I'm not, I'm not on Wi-Fi. I'm outside. So I'm trying to do what I can. But it is, there are little things I think you can do. You don't have to be completely overwhelmed. Just start small and do these things, turning off your Wi-Fi at night, making your room really dark, even wearing an eye mask, definitely keeping your phone out of your room. And if you have to keep it close, maybe plug it into a bathroom near you where you could hear it, but it's not close to you, and obviously on airplane mode. Because the one thing I've learned is that, distance is your friend. And so, just with the phone in the pocket, and if you can put that on airplane mode, like just little things throughout the day. But it was interesting just what you're saying about sleep, and I'd love to hear your opinion. Just as I learn more about how the body works at a cellular level, learning about the importance of melatonin, not just as a sleep hormone, but this master antioxidant that runs all these important programs in our body, namely autophagy and apoptosis during sleep, because sleep is so restorative. It has the potential to be so restorative, but in modern life, and when we have our phone in our room and we're scrolling and we're doing all these things, then we're losing restorative sleep. So what happens in sleep that is at a cellular level that is helping us, kind of wake up more refreshed, helping our body kind of regroup and restart for the next day?
So, so many things, right? Everyone I talk to and have interviewed, sleep is sort of quality sleep is ground zero for either maintaining health or recovering health. And what is going on with your sleep is a really good indicator of how healthy you are or can be. So I'll use myself as an example. I got into all of this because I was suffering from what I later learned was chronic fatigue, although I would characterize chronic fatigue now as just a symptom of mitochondrial dysfunction. But it's both a symptom and a diagnosis. And for me, I would sleep 10 hours per night and wake up exhausted and wake up not refreshed. For other people, it might be that they can't fall asleep. For other people, it might be that they fall asleep and then wake up in the middle of the night, not just for a little bit, but for like hours. And so the quality of your sleep is a really good indicator of how well your biology is functioning and of how well your mitochondria is functioning. And the great good news is like with all of the information that you're so beautifully sharing, Shannon, is there's so many things we can do because there's so many ways that we're sabotaging it that we are likely unaware of, which is great news, right? Because that it's not, I think sometimes sleep can be a really defeating issue because it's like, why can't I just sleep? Yeah. And so the list of things to look at might be long, but that's also really hopeful because that means there's so many things to try that will most likely help. But the bottom line is that sleep is when we go through a process called autophagy. But really what happens when we're sleeping is that our cells repair themselves. And if there's cells that are too broken to get repaired, they get thrown in the garbage. Right. So the low quality sleep is like if you ran your dishwasher and it was just like a trickle of cold water that came out. And then the next day you put the plates back in, but they're still kind of dirty because they just got like lightly sprayed with cold water instead of having the full blast of hot water and soap. And when our sleep quality is low, that's what's happening, but with our cells. So depending where your your mitochondrial weakness is, and it could be different for everybody, you're going to start to exhibit symptoms, and those symptoms are tied back to the fact that your body couldn't repair restore, clean, and stay functional. So over a period of time, like a long period of time, you might end up with Alzheimer's. But that's why I've come to understand that fatigue, and not just sleep deprivation, but fatigue that doesn't go away even if you feel like you quote unquote get enough sleep because your sleep quality is not good. Fatigue is a really, really, really important red flag. And so for anyone who's listening, if you feel fatigued on a regular basis and it doesn't seem to shift with sleep or exercise or improving your food, it's really, I would highly encourage you to do lots of research and maybe work with a health coach or a naturopath or someone like that, because dealing with the symptom of fatigue early can really, like, I think dealing with my chronic fatigue probably saved my life. And, it might have taken a few decades, but whatever was going on underneath that would most likely have become something quite much more serious. So the quality sleep is the starting point for everything. And the lack of it and the consequential fatigue is the red flag for everything.
Yeah.
From Alzheimer's to cancer to diabetes, right? Like anything,
Right.
it can. So pay attention to that fatigue.
Yes. And that's actually, I mean, so many women have this story, and it's my story as well. It's just this fatigue, and you can't kick it, and you're kind of semi-functioning, and everyone looks at you and says, "Oh, you look great," and you think everything's great, and you reach out to doctors, and they don't really have an answer, and they may say, "Oh, well, maybe you need an antidepressant, or maybe," and you're kind of like, "Well, no, I'm not depressed. I just feel fatigued." And it's so hard because sometimes you go to the doctor, you're feeling fatigued, you have major mitochondrial dysfunction, the doctor doesn't know it, you don't feel well, they don't have an answer, and then you leave the doctor feeling completely, you know, more frustrated than ever because you actually get a gold star. I mean, I had mitochondrial dysfunction. My cholesterol was very, very low. And so I actually wasn't producing vitamin D, right? I couldn't even sulfate vitamin D on my skin because my cholesterol was so low. And the doctor said, "Oh, great job. Go have a cheeseburger. You're doing a great job." And I was kind of like, "Okay, I'm going to go have a cheeseburger." I love cheeseburgers. I eat them all the time, but it wasn't what I needed. At the cellular level, my circadian rhythm was off, and I was, this is when, I was working in LA and I was working market hours, California and New York. I was up at 4:30 and I realized that I was putting together a series of time where I literally wasn't getting enough sunlight during the day. And of course, I was on screens a lot, Bloomberg screen, working screen, personal screen. I mean, it happens, and it's really amazing. But that's such good advice to say, listen to your fatigue. And if you've slept 12 hours, it's not just a number. It's not, I slept 8, I slept 10, I slept 12. If you slept 12 and you still feel fatigued, something's wrong, because 8 hours of great sleep is a lot better than 12 hours of, running a dishwasher that's not cleaning your dishes. And you wake up with these dirty dishes and it feels pretty miserable.
Yeah. It's so true. And I love that you talked about your experience with the doctor. Like I had a similar experience, and I'm like, and they ran all my labs. They're like, "Yep, your labs are great. You're good."
Oh,
I'm like, "I don't feel good." Like and so, not, nothing against doctors. Maybe, I don't know,
right.
but we need to have access to people who understand health through a different lens, especially in these early stages. The doctors are really optimized for crises. So it's kind of like, so when you're in that middle stage, which is where you're like, you've noticed that you're suffering in some way,
Mhm.
maybe most often with fatigue, Like they don't have any answers until you're really sick.
Exactly.
But we have the power to change that direction, to the course of that direction, if we address it earlier. And
Right.
so that's why I think what you're doing, Shannon, is so powerful because it's just a matter of understanding that, right? Like, we're reaching out to these doctors and it's like something's off. And they're like, yeah, no, you're
Hmm.
fine. And you
Hmm.
can tell that they have so, they're like, yeah.
Yeah. Right. And doctors are beautiful and they really want to help. I mean, they want to help you, but sometimes I'm realizing because when I talk to them about vitamin D and sun, their training doesn't supply that. And it's not their fault. It's just that the curriculum that they've been taught over the years, and a lot of this research is new, just, learning about melanopsin and the non-visual photoreceptors in our skin. I mean, these are things that are being learned after the year 2000. So we're really kind of in kind of a renaissance of health, and our medical community kind of hopefully can catch up because we're having a hard time catching up because we're fatigued and our circadian rhythm is broken. And I do think, the other thing that I experienced, and I don't know if you had this as well, but that as women especially, we can kind of get bogged down in our labels because we get labels from doctors and we get labels in our community. Oh, you're premenopausal. Oh, you're menopausal, or you're postmenopausal, or you're this or you're that. And I think women especially kind of take on those labels because they're thinking they want a solution. They want, whatever code the doctor is giving them to prescribe something and say, this is who you are. But I think it's really important when you kind of get back and know that we're our best healers, and we have these amazing environments around us, ideally. If we don't, we need to mitigate them, but we do have access to sun. And that I mean, it's kind of the most accessible healthcare for everyone, right? I mean, we can all get outside, we can all connect to nature, but it's just we've kind of lost that connection. So what are you seeing, when you're talking to people about well, number one, how disconnected they are, and kind of some stories about maybe from a clinical standpoint, what you've seen, and then what people are doing to slowly reconnect. Because when you're so disconnected, it's really hard to connect again because it doesn't feel natural. It feels great after a while, but sometimes that early part, you're still kind of not feeling it, I guess.
Yeah, not and it doesn't um make sense sometimes early on. I like to track where people are at on social media, and I was on Twitter or X the other day, and someone had posted a paper about how the sun being outside reduces all-cause mortality, right? So there are now a couple of papers that show quite clearly that the more time you spend outside, the longer you live, and the less sun you get, the more likely you are to die earlier. In the same way that smoking shows, the more you smoke, the less your life expectancy. It's the inverse of that. And someone had posted about one of these papers and said something along the lines of, get outside. It's important to your health. And there was a guy in the comments who was like, yeah, I'm not buying it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to engage with him because he wasn't being a jerk. He just was like, nah, I don't think so. So in the comments, I'm like, I'm not being a troll here. I genuinely would like to know why you are dismissing this information. And he was like, if this was true, we would know. Like we would have heard about it. And I thought, yeah, that's what I thought
Yeah.
when I first went down this rabbit hole. If this mattered this much, we would know. The way that we have cancer warnings on the cigarette packages. But then I thought, well, okay, but how long were cigarettes available before we had those cancer warnings, right?
Right.
It's like
Right.
decades.
Yeah.
And then I talked to Martin Moore-Eid, who was an early circadian researcher. You should interview him.
Okay.
He's fun.
Okay.
And he was like, yeah, no, we should have warning labels on the LED bulbs, the really bright LED bulbs, that you shouldn't turn them on after sunset. Like they're that dangerous. They're that toxic to our health. And I'm like, when did you know this? He's like, 1990s. I'm like, why didn't you tell anyone?
I know.
And he said, well, yeah, we used to joke, like the scientists all know, but none of their neighbors do. And I said,
Mm,
okay, you know what? Like the neighbors would like to know. We
right.
would like to know that turning on bright LED lights and watching TV without blue blocking glasses is increasing our risk significantly, not a little bit, a lot for breast cancer. I think we would like to know that. You and I grew up, we probably, I don't know a woman in her 40s and 50s who's not hasn't had her life touched in some way by breast cancer, either a relative or a friend or herself. And here is this like really important information. And the way that science works is that they don't come out and just say, hey, like, heads up, SOS.
Right.
We figured something out.
Right.
Circadian rhythm's actually like a billion times more important than we ever realized.
Right.
We should get on top of this. They're like, here's what they do. They're like, oh, we should study this more.
Right.
Okay, now we've isolated why this frequency is important. Now let's spend 5 years on this right? And
Right.
that's just what they do, which is fine if you're, I guess, except that we're all out here dying of circadian disruption.
Right.
So I don't remember your question, but my point is that we don't things can be really true and self-evident, and we cannot know about them because life has evolved in a different direction. So to make that connection back can feel a little jarring, can feel a little bit like, wait, what? Like looking at my phone before bed is going to like lead to diabetes. Like, what are you
Right.
talking about?
Right.
But I guess like my main point is the science is there. The evidence is there. We know these things are true. It's just a matter of us cognitively catching up with it and sharing the information in the way that you're doing, which is so great. So because it's like every time we hear it, it's like, oh yeah, I saw Huberman said that on Jimmy Fallon. Oh yeah, like every message matters because
Exactly.
we do have a gap to cover in terms of our awareness and just of our ability to comprehend that something could be so important and so ignored at the
Right.
same time.
It is. It's so interesting when you made that Huberman comment because I talk about circadian rhythm a lot and it's over like there's some political campaign where they say it's the economy stupid. Well, I say it's circadian rhythm stupid. It's kind of like let's get back to the basics and talk about this. But I think, just to be, compassionate about where people are and kind of meeting them where they are because when you say these kind of things and you say things about sun and longevity and things that kind of just are not intuitive, it takes 4 or 5 times for people to hear it. And I will have people come up to me and say, oh, Huberman said this. And I say, you know, I've told you that 10 times, but it's fine. And it's not a competition about how you get it and where you get it. It's just that you get it. And it's just going to take some time. And you need this kind of repetitive notion. And I think intuitively, people don't want to feel duped, you don't want to feel that someone had information that they weren't sharing. And I don't think there's any malicious thing going on here, but I do feel that kind of as CEOs of our own health and trying to make the best decisions we can, we just want to feel that we live in a health community and a health system where we're being given all the information and that we can make decisions and that if there's something that's really important and very specifically as important as circadian rhythm, we should be talking about this every day, all day, right? Um, so what are you seeing? You talked about the link between artificial light at night and breast cancer. What other diseases or sicknesses are you seeing? And maybe I'd love to hear more about neurodegenerative issues with regard to artificial light at night. What are your practitioners seeing and what does the research show?
So yeah, I mean, my information is from talking to other people who are on the front lines. I'm not a clinician myself. I'm a person who interviews them and talks to them, and but so the question, like artificial light at night, what is that connected to? What diseases is that connected to? And the answer is all of them, right? Like people will say, oh, like my cousin has blah, 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 blah. Should she block blue light at night? I'm like, I don't know what that is. I've never heard of it, but yes.
Right.
Because as I was saying earlier, it's like, it kind of depends what you're predisposed to in terms of your mitochondrial function, in terms of your genetics, which is, we now know is much more epigenetic, but there are still certain things that certain people will be more predisposed to than others. So you could have somebody who has a terrible light environment, who, eats sugar in front of a screen at night on a regular basis for years and years. And one person might end up with diabetes, and the other person might end up with Alzheimer's, and another person might end up with cancer. But it all comes back to the underlying dysfunction that we're causing by doing those things. And it'll just show up differently in different people. There's some recent research that showed a I'm going to say correlation. I think it might have even been stronger than just correlation, but a very strong link between artificial light at night, as in coming in through the window. If your bedroom window is facing the street and the street lights are on, like things like that, the correlation between that and early onset Alzheimer's. It was really like off the charts. And the scientists who did that research, in the summary, they were like, yeah, we didn't, this wasn't what we were looking for,
Right.
but this is what we found. And we're actually very surprised. And they did it by looking at clusters of where people lived. And then they looked at like the artificial light at night through the showing, which people who lived in clusters where the artificial light at night was very strong, there were clusters of early onset Alzheimer's in those areas compared to people who didn't have that. So if you do have that outside your window, it's like blackout curtains, there's always an option.
Right.
But the research is coming fast and furious. If you go into PubMed, which is where all the research is, all research papers are published, and you type circadian disruption or circadian dysregulation, there are over 90,000 papers in there looking at various ways that circadian disruption affects our health. And every time someone studies it, it becomes clearer and clearer. So it's like, I can't overstate how important it is. I know you're on the same page. That's why we're here together.
Right.
That's why you started Squint Essentials. Yeah, it is a little overwhelming to realize how important it is and how little attention is paid and how little we talk about it, and how hardly any doctors will even think to bring it up,
Right.
given how much evidence there is for how much it matters.
Right. Because I think just in general for me, I mean, I'm a business person, so I want to get to the answer quickly, right? And so, I feel that there's such chaos in the health community right now with so many answers. Are you juicing celery? Are you killing parasites? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? And then when we get back to the fact that, wait, all these things that you're having issues with, all these things that you're trying to eliminate or help or fix, they all are actually fixed by this much larger concept, which is this circadian rhythm. So to me, it's so inspiring because it's such a catch-all for so many things. Just like you said, you talk to people, oh, I have this cancer and this cancer and this cancer. No, we're not doctors, obviously, but at the foundation, circadian rhythm will be an incredible approach to dealing with any sickness or any health issue. So, and the night issue too, I think it's really interesting to me as a community. I mean, you have these like dark communities and, and you can really be impacted by your neighbors,
Hmm.
and I'm impacted by my own light on my property. So basically any kind of garden lighting, I cut, because it was actually, lighting up the trees at night, but it was coming into my bedroom. And it's these kind of things, even on your own, in your own world, you don't realize that you have these circadian disruptors that are really powerful because basically it's telling your brain, oh, wait, it's daylight again. Meanwhile, you're in your bed, you're trying to, clean the dishwasher, but you're disrupting this natural process. What about in particular, and I know you talk to a lot of people, but just hormones and light and circadian rhythm. What is your experience in talking to, experts that are looking at hormones, and what are they saying?
Yeah, I mean, the what I've learned from talking to people is that our hormones are largely controlled and programmed by light. So, our bodies, as you were saying earlier, Shannon, like our bodies know what to do if they have the right input. So if we start our day by going outside in the morning within like, an hour at least of sunrise, the frequencies, those light frequencies are going to tell our body like, oh, it's morning. And they're going to turn on the things and make the things that we need for our day and like ramp down the things that we don't need anymore, because the things that we need while we're sleeping. And it's like this like chain reaction, this cascade of effects happens. And then as the day goes on, the light frequency changes, giving different signals. And it's literally instructions to our bodies of what to make, what to not make, and so if we screw that up, our body, like we cannot be hormonally balanced.
Right.
And so it's not, people are like, okay, so like if I just like optimize my circadian rhythm, like everything is solved. And it's like not necessarily, but nothing will be solved if you don't, right?
Exactly.
That's the foundation. So, so yes, we will still have hormonal changes during pregnancy and perimenopause and menopause and all
Right.
these beautiful life stages that
Exactly.
we get to go through. There will be, and maybe we will want to do, bioidentical hormones, or maybe like there may be things we want to layer on, but the foundation of hormonal health comes with light, comes from light. And if we start doing other interventions without laying that foundation, we're,
Right.
we're sort of messing around. We're not starting from ground zero.
Well, it is interesting too with women, especially, we're problem solvers by nature and we're nurturers but we want to take care of things. And so it's very difficult because, I mean, I just, from my own personal experience, and I'm sure you relate, when your circadian rhythm is off and things start happening, the fatigue, the joint pain, you're not recovering after exercise like you used to, all these kind of little things. And you kind of push them aside. Oh, this is just life. This is just getting older. But it's really fascinating to me that when you kind of get back to the basics and get back to circadian rhythm, how many of those things can actually go away. It sounds too good to be true, but they do. And we spend so much time chasing each one individually. I'm going
Yeah.
to chase this diet, or I'm going to chase this way to exercise, or I'm going to chase this way to manage my hormones. But that ground zero notion, that's such an important, I love that, because that's really where it all begins. Um, what do you do? What do you do in the winter? And I know we just got out of this, but I do. I mean, I'm in California. It's actually chilly right now. It's not as nice as it looks, but it is beautiful. I'm not gonna lie. But what advice do you have for people that, are still in the cold? Spring has sprung, but they're sitting there in the snow saying, not for me. And my seasonal affective disorder is kicking in. I'm really losing it. What kind of inspirational thoughts do you have for them and things that they can do on a daily basis before they have access to this kind of stronger UVB generating sun?
For me, the winters became a whole new ballgame when I just understood that time outside still mattered. Even if I wasn't making vitamin D, even if it wasn't warm, even if it was really cloudy, like it's really cloudy here today. Can always tell by like how pale I look on Zoom. Some days I get lots of sun through this window. And that was a huge shift for me, right? It's like just being outside because even during the winter, there's infrared light, which we are all deficient in. So infrared light can penetrate your clothes. So even going for a walk, ideally a couple of walks a day, spending as much time outside in the as possible, like even when the weather's not great, and it doesn't matter if you're bundled up, if your eyes are outside, your face is outside, you're getting some infrared light through your clothes. So I think that's the key thing is to mitigate mitigate the bright light at night as much as possible, which is annoying in the winter because it's dark at like 4:30 or 5, depending where you live. But it's not complicated. It just means like using incandescent bulbs or warm bulbs. And if you want to watch TV, you wear the blue blocking
Right.
glasses. And I have found that the darker my evenings are, the more melatonin I make, which you alluded to earlier, plays all kinds of roles. And there's even some suggestion that it might be like compensating for not having vitamin D in some ways. So really to just maximize that melatonin production by getting natural sunlight in the day and lots of darkness in the night. The second thing that was suggested to me, because I've lived in a lot of different places, sometimes cold winters, sometimes not, I'm back with the cold winters, was infrared sauna.
Mm.
And I find going in an infrared sauna, even a couple times a week, made a huge difference. Because again, it's that infrared light, which we're all deficient in, especially in the winter, because we don't spend as much time outside. So those are the two things that really have changed my winters.
Amazing. So I am almost out of time, sadly, with you. I am so hoping, can we do a part two?
Yeah, I'd love
Oh,
to.
good. Oh, good. I mean, this is all such great, great ideas for people. And I think it's so amazing that people are kind of, in a sad way, we don't want people to get sick to start questioning. But I think when people are looking for answers, they're more open to maybe some new thoughts and ideas on how to address how they're feeling. And so thank you for sharing about circadian rhythm and about light and about artificial light at night and all the things that are so powerful in our health. And thank you for the Quantum Biology Collective. It's such an amazing, amazing resource for people. And the amount of research articles that you've collected and the people that you're speaking with that are kind of, on the front lines of all things new research, it's really incredible. So thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you for your time. And I'm excited for part two.
Me too. And I love what you're doing, Shannon. It's so
Oh, great.
exciting.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay,
Okay, bye.
bye.